Hello, dear friends, and welcome to Kardec Radio, where we nourish our souls 24/7 with thousands of podcasts around the clock, where we boost our knowledge and improve our inner transformation, our moral transformation. And today we will continue with our study of the book Genesis by Allan Kardec. And we're finding ourselves in chapter 17, which is entitled Predictions in the Gospel. And today we will be covering Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. But before we dive into that chapter, we want to loop back for one moment so that we feel connected to the previous chapter, which was precursory signs. And there Jesus talked about the portrayal of the end of time. And we've studied it all, but we're just going to bring three highlights because they will be tying us beautifully into our new chapter. So here in the precursory signs, we learn from Allan Kardec the following. Was it really the end of the world that Jesus was foretelling with his second coming when he said, when the gospel is preached throughout the earth, then the end will come? The end will come. Was Jesus really foretelling? What was he really foretelling us? And the answer is, it would not be rational to believe that God would destroy the world at the exact moment in which it entered upon the path of moral progress through the practice of the evangelical teachings. So when Jesus foretold his second coming, he could not have meant, logically speaking, that would have meant the destruction of earth at that very moment. He then says, when will such renewal come true then, that Jesus promised? And the answer Jesus gave us was no one knows, not even the Son, meaning himself, S-O-N, not S-U-N. Not even the Son knows when that renewal will take place. However, he says, when the time does come, people will be forewarned by precursory signs, so we will know. We just need to pay attention. And then he explains these signs. These signs will be neither in the sun, meaning the sun, sunshine, sun, nor in the stars, but in the social state of affairs. The signs we will find will be in the social state of affairs and in phenomena that are more moral than physical. So he's clearly showing us the path towards our inner work, inner transformation. But the signs will be our social state of affairs. And then he says, by leading to an improvement in people's moral states, the widespread practice of the gospel will by itself usher in the kingdom of the good, and it will cause the collapse of the kingdom of evil. So we will see those precursory signs of a new era in our social state of affairs. It's linked to our inner transformation. And that is linked to the widespread passing on of the gospel, the good news. So it shows us clearly where our focus lies. It's in the study and the practice of the gospel that Jesus gifted us with, where he put all the ingredients we need for our moral transformation into it. Then he says, thus it is the end of the old world. The world governed by prejudice, pride, selfishness, fanaticism, disbelief, greed, and all of the evil passions that Christ alluded to when he said, when the gospel is preached throughout the earth, then the end will come. However, that end, which won't mean the earth is imploding, according to Alan Kardec, because it doesn't make logical sense, but it's the sense. But it is the end as we know this world to be, namely with all the prejudice, pride, selfishness, fanaticism, and so forth. But this end will precipitate a conflict. And of course, we may add, we find ourselves in that conflict right now. So, but the guidance is for us, the focus, the remedy. Let's look at the gospel. Let's study the gospel more. Let's practice the gospel more. So now, today, we will be now moving on to another prediction that Jesus made. And it is, your sons and daughters shall prophesy. And what did he mean by that? Now let us see. We find this section in two areas. One is Acts, verse 2:17, and Joel, verse 2:28 and 29. In the last days, says the Lord, in the last days, says the Lord, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. I will pour out my spirit. I will pour out my spirit, right? Spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Your young men will have visions, and your old men shall have dreams. In those days, I will pour out my spirit upon my servants, and they shall prophesy. Let us see what Jesus is really saying with that. And also, please all feel welcomed. Big hug. I can say hi if I look and who is here. Tony. Hi, Tony. Thank you for joining. And Mark. Thank you. So nice to see you, friend. And maybe there's a few more joining us. Thank you for being here. So here Alan Kardec helps us to understand. If one considers the current state of the physical and moral worlds, the tendencies, the aspirations, and the presentiments of the masses, the decay of the ancient beliefs that have struggled in vain for a century against new ideas, one cannot doubt that a new order of things is being prepared and that the old world has reached its end. Now, the funny thing is, we feel he's speaking to us right now, right today, and happy Easter, by the way. What a beautiful feast and festivity of renewal. What a beautiful day. And how appropriate that we're studying the subject of renewal. So we feel that, of course, Alan Kardec wrote that for us today, right at this moment. Interestingly enough, though, it's about 150, 160 years ago. He spoke to the people with the same exact words. So we see kind of like how long this process has lasted. And of course, it will last a little longer, right? But we've definitely advanced and we're definitely in it right now. So the new order of things is being prepared and that the old world has reached its end. The old world has reached its end. Planet Earth is destined to progress from a world of atonement to a world of regeneration, and we with it. So let's see. If one were to put aside the allegorical aspect of certain portrayals, and if one were to scrutinize the inner meaning of Jesus' words, then by comparing the current situation with the times he foretold as being signs of an era of renewal, one could not help but be convinced that many of his predictions are presently coming true. from which one must conclude that we have reached the times he announced. So with so many words and around, he's basically telling us that it is pretty clear that those predictions that Jesus made, so-called end of time, as we just looked back in the previous chapter, that cannot logically mean that the earth is going to disappear. How would that make sense? But it's the end of time as we know it, where exactly in this battle, the good force is winning over the evil, over darkness. So these predictions that Jesus made are presently coming true. And once again, we have to chuckle that this was 150, 160 years ago. But it's as prevalent, if not even more so today for us. This conclusion is being confirmed all over the globe by the spirits who are manifesting. Now let us remember that the chapter we're finding ourselves is Your Sons and Daughters Shall Prophesy. And of course, that's linked to spirits, right? So he says this conclusion is being confirmed all over the globe by the spirits who are manifesting themselves. There's lots of spirit messages coming through, right? And spiritism is at the core of it. So many books, Chico Xavier, Psychographed, so many books, so much spirit information coming through. So now we're moving on to item 61. If you want to follow along, it's in this version of Genesis, page 407, Your Sons and Daughters Shall Prophesy. Hi, John. Thanks for joining. Nice to have you here, dear friend. So, as has been seen, the coming of Spiritism fulfills Jesus's most important predictions because of the influence that it must obviously exert on ideas. Now let us remind ourselves. He says, the coming of Spiritism, of course, the book is part, Genesis is part of the coming of Spiritism into the earth, right? So this is 150, 160 years ago. What was it? Fulfills Jesus' most important predictions. Now, let us remind ourselves. Let us go back to the front of the book, Genesis. And there in chapter 1, we're reminding ourselves about the coming of Spiritism and its meaning and what it brought. And there we know that Spiritism, taking its point of departure from the very words of Christ, remember we just said predictions by Christ, but Spiritism is also a fulfillment of a prediction, right? Is a direct consequence of Jesus's doctrine. So Spiritism, taking its point of departure from the very words of Christ, is a direct consequence of Jesus's doctrine. To the vague idea of the future life, Spiritism adds the revelation of the existence of the invisible world that surrounds us and populates space, and thereby renders belief clear. It gives it body, consistency, and reality of thought. Spiritism comes along as a direct extension of Jesus's teachings, and it helps us to clarify, explain, understand what Jesus alluded to as a vague life of the future, vague future life, and now adds the existence of the invisible world, which fleshes it out for us, makes it clear, makes it logical, makes it tangible. Spiritism has defined the ties that unite the soul and the body. We know it's via what? How is the body and the spirit linked? It's via the perispirit, as the subtle body that creates the link between our physical body and our spirit. Men and women know where they have come from now as a result of Spiritism. We know where we're coming from, where we are going, and why we're here on earth. Spiritism teaches us all of that. And why we also learn why we suffer temporarily. And we see everywhere the justice of God. If we pay attention, we see God's justice and mercy in our own lives, in the lives of our family members and friends, all around us on planet Earth. We just need to pay attention, open our eyes and ears. Those who have eyes and ears, they will hear, right? We have them, so we can hear and see. They know that the soul progresses unceasingly. So this is all what Spiritism gifted us with, the clarity. And the soul progresses unceasingly through a series of successive existences, reincarnation, until the soul reaches the degree of perfection that can bring it close to God. All souls have the same point of departure. We were all created simple and ignorant. We all started with the same goodies in our bag, our backpack, with the same exact beginning, as he says, or the same point of departure. And we were created equal, ignorant, simple and ignorant. We received the same aptitude for progress. And we all have free will. There are no differences between us as a result, except what? How do we differ from each other? Of course, we have different bodies, but apart from that, that's just temporary. It's our degree of progress. That's where we differ. Everything else, God created us equally ignorant, with all the same aptitudes, with the same free will, with everything. Complete justice. But we still feel very different from our next door neighbors, even family members. And that is because our degree of progress. And Spiritism came to help us understand all of that. And we also learned through Spiritism that demons are spirits who are still a little evolved and imperfect. So that also takes the myth out of demons. Then, by studying the situation of spirits, which is us, humans know that happiness or unhappiness in the spirit life is inherent to their degree of perfection or imperfection. So our happiness or unhappiness depends directly on our degree of evolution, on our degree of purity. Each spirit suffers the direct and natural consequences of that. Why are we unhappy and why are we suffering? What consequences are we suffering from? From our wrongs, the consequences of all the wrongs we do, which is really based on our ignorance. And that's the ignorance that's based on intellectual knowledge as well as moral knowledge. Since the spirit depends on all to improve themselves, they each can, by virtue of their free will, prolong or shorten their suffering. So it's in our own free hands. Just as those who still suffer from their excesses as long as they do not put an end to them. So our unhappiness or our happiness depends on how we use our free will. In Thought and Life, Emmanuel reminds us that the will is the CEO, is the boss, the manager of all the departments of our mind. And it's the will that controls our thinking, our feelings. And that the will needs to be educated. Because an uneducated will tells me to stay in bed all day long, for example. But we know that's just not going to help, right? Idleness and laziness is not going to help. It's an excess that will prolong my suffering. So all of this clarity came with Spiritism. Then we also learned the plurality of existences, whose principle Christ established in the gospel, but without defining it more than at that time, is one of the most important laws revealed by Spiritism. So the plurality of existences, Jesus only alluded to it because the peoples of his time were not quite ready for it. But he promised us the consoler who would be with us forever which is the spirits, the spirit of truth. Under the auspices of the spirit of truth, we are receiving so much more information. And one aspect of it is the exact and clear explanation with all the examples also in the books that Chico Xavier wrote, channeled, books that came through him about reincarnation and the importance of it. It's the most important law, Alan Kardec says, and Spiritism revealed it to us. It demonstrates the reality and necessity of progress. Through this law of reincarnation, humans can explain now all the apparent anomalies that life presents, all the things that we may in our ignorance call unjust, in the injustice that we tend to see everywhere, is now explained because there is none. God is infinitely just and merciful. It explains the differences in social position, premature deaths, the inequality of intellectual and moral aptitudes. It's very important to understand reincarnation. So I think we can pause here. Spiritism has come to confirm, explain, and develop, by means of the new laws of nature that it reveals, everything that Christ had said and did. Everything Christ said and did. Fulfilled said. It's beautiful. It's so helpful. It helps us so much. So let's go back and read the sentence again. As has been seen, the coming of Spiritism fulfills Jesus' most important predictions because of the influence that it must obviously exert on ideas. So much influence, so much more clarity, so many more teachings. It's beautiful, and it helps us navigating our incarnations, our reincarnations. Furthermore, it is clearly announced in what is recorded in the Acts of the Apostles. And quote, "In the last days, says the Lord, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy." So in the last days, right, those are the days where we're finding ourselves in, ever since Spiritism came on the scene, as we can read, but we're still in it. So in these last days now, Jesus will pour out his spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. So what does that mean? Let's look. So Alan Kardec comes to the rescue. We love him dearly. Again, more clarity. What did Jesus mean by that? And Alan Kardec says, this is unmistakably the announcement of the popularization of what? You guys can guess it. What is it? What is this statement based on? It's an integral part of Spiritism. It's mediumship. So we'll read it again. This is unmistakably the announcement of the popularization of mediumship, which is being revealed in our day in individuals of all ages, of both sexes and all walks of life. Right? We know we're all mediums. Whether we're ostensive or non-ostensive mediums, we're still mediums. We're all under the influence of spirits, always. And we know we can study the many categories, the different types of spirits, but we are being influenced. Mediumship is huge. It's constant and everywhere. So when Jesus says, in the last days, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, your sons and daughters shall prophesy. It's mediumship. The spirits coming through us and bring new information. Consequently, it is a prediction of the universal manifestation of spirits, right? Because in mediumship, we give spirits a voice or action, right? Or writing, whatever the different types of mediumships that exist, we can study in the medium's book. Because without spirits, there would be no mediums. Right? So logical. Thus, it is stated that this will happen in the last days, and we're in it, ever since Spiritism came on the scene. That's when the last days apparently already had started. And since we have not come to the end of the world, but rather to the time of its regeneration, one must understand these words to mean the last days of the moral world that comes to an end. All right, so we're going to go over this. So Jesus made a prediction, and he said that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. What did he mean by that? What was he alluding to? Mediumship will become a common phenomenon. Now, that doesn't mean mediumship started with spiritism. We're not saying that. But it became a concept that now could be studied, could be understood better in all of its different manifestations and also pitfalls. How to practice mediumship consciously and in a Christ-centered way. So there he says, this is unmistakably the announcement of mediumship, which will be in all walks of life. Consequently, this particular prediction is of the universal manifestation of spirit, universal, everywhere, all over the globe. Because without spirits, there will be no mediums. That's clear. Thus, it is stated that this will happen in the last days. Now, we've already established the earth won't pop, disappear, implode, or whatever. It doesn't make sense. But the last days refer to the time of Earth's regeneration. We are in this conflictual phase, as he predicted. There will be conflict as a result, where the Earth is shifting from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration. And that's the regeneration of the Earth. And those last days are the last days of the moral world that come to an end. The moral world as we've known this Earth to be on that level of moral evolution. And that will change. And it has to change. And so much came up in the last year and a half. So much more became clear. So much more was revealed to us of what's not aligned with Christ consciousness on our planet. And hopefully also, and most importantly, inside of us. Because that's what we can control, right? We can't doctor around out here. We need to work on this. Yes, we can inform ourselves. Yes, we must study and accumulate knowledge and educate ourselves. No question. But the ultimate work, it lies in our moral transformation, in practicing the good 24/7, right? So, and all of this, of course, is based on the immortality of the soul, right? On reincarnation. So, let's go to the gospel for a moment, because there now, since we're talking about mediumship, since we're talking about prophecy, because Jesus said, right? Spirit, your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Let us go to the chapter that helps us see the importance of discernment. As mediums, we need to be discerning. And of course, what is the best way of assuring that we are doing our best, that we receive messages that are as pure as possible? That is focusing on our inner transformation. As we heard early on when we got together, first, the gospel, studying the gospel and practicing the teachings from the gospel. But there is also that thing that we may receive a lot of prophecies, a lot of messages, because mediumship is now a common phenomena, practiced widely all over the planet. How can we discern the messages? So let us go to chapter 21 in the Gospel according to Spiritism. And that will remind us, of course, we know all of this already, but effort and repetition, that's where it lies, right? That's how we learn. So it is chapter 21, which is there will be false Christs and false prophets. And that is something we need to be very much aware of in our own work and in observing and receiving messages from the outside. So, first of all, Alan Kardec helps us to understand prophets. Prophets are commonly perceived as possessing the gift of being able to reveal the future. Remember, Jesus says, and the brothers and sisters will prophecy. Our mind builds instantly a bridge to foretelling the future. But let's pause, because Alan Kardec is a little bit more detailed, helping us understand prophets better, prophecies. So we think it's possessing the gifts of being able to reveal the future. So that the words prophecies and predictions have become synonymous, right? Don't we think that prophecy is like a prediction? However, in its evangelical sense, the word prophet has a broader meaning. Now, this is important so that we are not misinterpreting what Jesus said, the prophecy that we're all going to be through mediumship, making predictions, right? Has a broader meaning. It applies to all who have been sent by God with the mission of instructing humankind. So the emphasis is on instruction and not foretelling the future. And revealing hidden the things and mysteries of the spiritual life. How many? So we say it again, revealing hidden things and mysteries of the spiritual life. In all the books that Emmanuel wrote, André Louis, Toshiko Xavier, and many more spirits, it's all about instruction, understanding, creating understanding, explanation of how the spirit world, how this world is organized and functions, what's important, right? So it's exactly what Alan Kardec is telling us. And that was before all those books were written. So it applies to all who have been sent by God in the mission of instructing humankind and revealing hidden the things and mysteries of the spiritual life, which are all the beautiful books that came through Chico Xavier and, of course, Divaldo Franco and others, right? Hence, a person can be a prophet without making predictions. So let us download that. So when Jesus said that everyone was going to be prophesying, now we don't want to create that association that, okay, we know now he's talking about mediumship, but mediumship doesn't mean we're foretelling the future necessarily at all, right? But what it does mean, most and foremost, is that we're bringing more instructions, more knowledge, more education from the spirit world to help us here to navigate our incarnations better. Then he continues and says, so then miracles are not the exclusive privilege of those sent by God. That's another thing we like to do. Is like, oh, okay, we want a miracle, right? We go to spiritist centers because we want something magical and miraculous to happen. Maybe a healing, maybe a message, right? So that's our tendency, that we look for that. But Alan Kardec says, not so fast. No, miracles are not the exclusive privilege of those sent by God. He says, they would not prove anything, since nothing would distinguish the miracles performed by saints from the miracles performed by the devil. So it's not about miracles, because that can be very deceiving. So-called miracle, which is only that which we can't explain, because there's very few miracles, because with spiritual science and spiritism becoming more and more powerful, explains so much that was coined a miracle before. We studied that, right, in the last year. So we can go back to Kardec Radio and go over all the explanations of why the so-called miracles aren't any miracles. They can be reproduced. They can be explained. thanks to Spiritism and Alan Kardec. To uneducated common folk, every phenomena with an unknown cause comes across as supernatural, right? Whenever we can't explain it, we call it supernatural, extraordinary, and miraculous. Once the cause is known, however, it is realized that the phenomena, as extraordinary as it may seem, is nothing other than the application of a natural law. And that's what Spiritism helped us to understand. In this manner, the circle of supernatural events shrinks to the extent that the circle of scientific knowledge broadens. So the more science broadens, scientific knowledge broadens, also spiritual scientific knowledge broadens, the less miracles will exist because it can be explained. Definition of a miracle is it's only supernatural when we can't explain it or reproduce it. But anything that's based on a natural law can be reproduced anytime. Humans in all eras have exploited certain knowledge they possess in order to give themselves the prestige of a supposedly superhuman power or a supposed divine mission. These are the false Christ and false prophets. So let us say that again. Excuse me, we have something in the throat. Humans in all eras have exploited certain knowledge they possess in order to give themselves the prestige of a supposedly superhuman power or a supposed divine mission. There's a lot of false prophets, spirits, just like us incarnated, right? We're often, so many of us are phony, false prophets, so to speak, right? We put on a facade, we pretend to be someone that we really aren't fully, or not all the time, because pride likes us to look good. Well, it's not any different in the spirit world, right? It's the same principle, as long as we're unevolved. So those are the false Christs and the false prophets. Now, with mediumship becoming more and more common, this is a pitfall. This is something we need to be aware of. True prophets are recognized by what? So what are we looking for? By more serious, exclusively moral characteristics. Serious moral characteristics. Of course, we're not going into depth here, but we're reminding ourselves of the bigger picture, and then we're all invited to go back to the medium's book, to the gospel, to go into depth and see how exactly we can take apart messages that come through so that we know that we can make sure we're not falling prey to a false prophet. And we know now prophets do not necessarily at all predict the future, but they're giving information. By providing an explanation for a certain order of phenomena that have been incomprehensible until now, Spiritism destroys what still remained in the realm of the extraordinary. Right? We said that already before. Spiritism has revealed another category, much more dangerous than false Christs and prophets. Wow. Let us wake up. There's something worse than false Christs and false prophets. What could that be? Thanks to Spiritism, it was revealed. It is found not among humans. Now we're relieved, right? But where can it be found? Where is that much more, this category, which is more dangerous than false Christs and prophets? Where do we find it? It's not among humans, meaning incarnates. It's among discarnates. Yes, that of deceiving, hypocritical, proud, and pseudo-learned spirits who have passed from the earth to the spirit world and have adorned themselves with venerable names in order to seek in order to give credence to the most bizarre and absurd ideas. So, dear friends, we need to be on the lookout, because we are the ones who may attract them. We're the ones who may fall prey to their delusions. And it's, of course, the law of affinity that attracts them to us, and we are attracted to them. And then, under those circumstances, we very often don't recognize that the messages that we distribute are bogus, are not from high on high. So this is really important for us. With the prediction that Jesus made, that at the end of time, which is the time we're finding ourselves in, that mediumship will be widespread, we need to be aware of these different facets. John's letter warns against them when he says, "Dearly beloved, do not believe all spirits, but test whether the spirits are from God. For many false prophets have appeared in the world." Spiritism provides the means to test them by pointing out the characteristics by which good spirits can be recognized. Characteristics that are always what? Moral. They're always moral and never material. We may want, after we've concluded our study, pick up the medium's book for this particular subject, because it is very important. As we know, these predictions, this particular prediction right now that we're studying tonight, pertains to our time. Mediumship is everywhere, and we need to be aware of the messages that we bring and that we receive. So, for all of us who want to go deeper or remind ourselves of more in-depth characteristics to work with in our distinguishing, distinguishing spirits on high from lower order spirit messages, we may want to go to the medium's book, and here it is. It's part 2 of the medium's book, chapter 24 and following. So it starts in chapter 24, and there we can go deeper to make sure that we are educated and don't fall into the false prophecies. Spirits are judged by the quality of their deeds, just as the tree by the quality of its fruit. Just like what Jesus said. He says, yeah, I'm the king of this world, but judge me by my fruit. Look at what I do, what I bring to this world. And we know that to be true in nature by the trees, and the same is true with spirit messages. Louis, who is a spirit, he came through in Bordeaux in 1861. He helps us out a little bit before we go back to the medium's book. The highest degrees of the eternal, so spirits possess the highest degree of the eternal and Christian virtues when they display charity, love, indulgence, the goodness that reconciles all souls. If in support of their words they add actions, then you can say these are truly messages of God. We know, we will feel, we just need to be open. And the more we educate ourselves, the more knowledge we accumulate in what we want to look for, what we need to look for to discern the messages, the easier it becomes. So we're looking for charity, love, indulgence, forgiveness, for uniting messages. We've already learned that spirits on high don't give us dates and locations necessarily. They're not into this prediction mode, but they're more into information, helping us understand knowledge. So let's see, was there anything else? Yeah. So what we will be shying away from: run from those who display one atom of what? What do we not want to see in spirit messages? What is a red flag? Well, we know that all evil derives from selfishness and pride, right? So if a spirit displays pride, oh, I'm Jesus coming through, right? Maybe not, right? So we don't want to be critical, but we do need to be discerning. The light of discernment is very important. So run from those who display one atom of pride. And that's a pretty strong statement. So let us keep that in mind and make sure that we're aware of that. And then another consideration is that most true missionaries of God are unaware of this fact. So they're modest, humble, meek. They carry out the mission to which they have been called through the force of their genius, and they're not even aware of it. Seconded by a hidden power that inspires and guides them without their knowing it, and with no premeditated plan. In other words, true prophets are revealed by their actions. They are discovered by others, whereas false prophets present themselves as messengers from God. So if a spirit needs to advertise him or herself itself, we may want to wake up. But the true messengers from God, they will be found. They don't need to reveal themselves. So the messengers from God are humble and modest. The others are proud and full of themselves. They speak with arrogance, and like all deceitful persons, always seem fearful of not being believed. So this gives us a little bit more food for thought. There's more also here in the gospel. So we were reading from chapter 21. There's more information, and we know that the Medium's book, of course, is our ultimate resource in helping us to be more discerning. So let us summarize. What did we learn today? We learned that we are at these end of times, that Earth is transitioning, that it is happening with a struggle, that we are part and parcel of it, and it's our knowledge and moral transformation most and foremost. And we need to be focused on the gospel, because Jesus said it's the end of time is when the gospel will be studied and practiced among all of us, and that's when we all come together. So let us focus on that. And then we also looked at the prediction in the last days, which is now: I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. We know that what is meant by that is mediumship, that we looked at the definition of prophecy. Prophecy does not mean predictions of the future, but it is giving more information, and we learned a little bit more about the light of discernment to understand better that there are false Christs and prophets, and that there are prophets from God, and how to learn to distinguish between the two. And the last days that Jesus is predicting, talking about, does not mean the earth is going to vanish, implode, explode, or whatever, according to Alan Kardec. But what it means is the last days of the moral world as we've known it. And that is the transition we're right in the middle of. All right, dear friends, next week we will be talking about the last judgment. It's going to be exciting. Let's see what is meant by that. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, dear friends. It's been a pleasure, as always. And so, God willing, we will see each other again in a week, same place, same time. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of this beautiful Easter Sunday. Sending you much love, big hug, and a kiss. Mwah. Take good care. Bye.